education academic end. Today we have with us our guest speaker, Dr. Krunal Soni. He is a distinguished associate professor of finance and accounting at GSFC University, Vadodara. With a remarkable blend of over 10 years of academic experience and 2.5 years of industry experience, he has carved a niche for himself in the field of finance and management. Dr. Soni's academic credentials are impressive, with a PhD in management and plethora of publication in reputable journals such as Scopus, ABDC, and UGC Care listed journals. He has also been recognized for his innovative research, receiving awards for Best Research Paper and holding a patent under the Intellectual Property Right Act. As a sought after resource person, Dr. Soni has been invited over 130 times to share his expertise on research methodology, data analysis, entrepreneurship, and many more, guiding students, faculty, and researchers across India. Today, Sir will be guiding us on the topic experiential learning pedagogy. We welcome Sir with all due respect, and without any further ado, let's start the session.
Thank you, madam. Please confirm the screen sharing. Yeah, I hope it is visible to everyone.
Yes, sir.
Right. Thank you. Okay. So good evening, all. On the last day of this faculty development program on innovative teaching and learning pedagogy. So, we had many teaching learning tools, in terms of how to make efficient teaching learning process, in terms of better conveying the message to the students, and at the same time we would have the wide coverage of the concept and content that we have to taken up for this study. So that is where experiential learning is always going to play a pivotal role in all those aspects, and it is very important that every faculty should give much importance and to try to focus upon those methods which always brings some flavors into their day-to-day teaching learning process. So with that approach, nothing is permanent and nothing is temporary, but it is a time being approach, where the requirement and resource mapping is always be there, and at the same time the content, the content requirement in terms of delivering those topics in the minds of students in such a way that it reach to their mind, and at the same time that things, the delivery and the session would be digestible for the students' point of view. So to make those things, we always have to have different trial and error things that we all have to adopt into our day-to-day teaching and learning process. And that is where the concept of experiential learning will always come into the picture, right? So that is where we have to, give much more importance on day-to-day learning and experiment. And out of this experiment, we also have some learnings. And out of those learnings, we would be able to download those learnings to our students, and, whatever, the class or as a mentor, we have to deliver the things, we would be able to deliver those things. So that is where the concept of experiential learning plays a pivotal role in all such manner. So this is a flow of presentation that we are going to discuss today. So we will start with the experiential learning. So that is where we would able to discuss the meaning of experiential learning. So if at all I'm talking about the adoption of the experiential learning, right? So what is this experiential learning? How this experiential learning will come into the picture, and what are the flows and what are the content that I need to taken up as a part of experiential learning in our day-to-day life. So we will discuss about here the meaning of the experiential learning. At the same time, how the experiential learning gained the importance from the market. That is where the person who has given this particular theory in terms of experiential learning. So here we have to discuss about the meaning or the person who has given this particular concept, and that is where this concept is still alive, and it is still alive in a sense that we adopt those concepts, we adopt those theories in our day-to-day life, and we continuously prove ourselves to be competent by having different sort of experiment in our life, and that is where the concept of experiential learning is always comes to picture, because before experimenting anything we also have to gain some experience. What are the different stages of experiential learning, right? So if at all we are talking about the experiential learning, so we have to discuss stage by stage, the adoption learning through the experiment. We have to adopt such experiential learning. So what are the different stages in terms of human psychology and parameters that we have to take into consideration? So here we will try to talk about the different stages as a part of experiential learning, and then we have to talk about the different methods of the experiential learning. So that is where we will see to it the different sort of methods as a part of experiential learning. So what is the meaning of experiential learning, right? So there is one Chinese proverb in terms of understanding the human psychology. So this particular Chinese proverb says that if you tell me something, right, in the class. So when we talks about telling something in the class, that is in teaching learning process, it is always a classroom discussion that is happening in during the session. So that is where the teacher will tell something to students in terms of lecture mode or either in terms of discussion mode. So there would be a chances that we will not try to focus upon, because when I'm saying that I will forget, so there would be a chances that when I'm challenging that I will forget, then it means I had not focused upon, or I have not been instructed to focus upon, or at a moment when the things was happening, I was not aware about the importance of the things which is happening in the classroom. And that's why, as a student, I have not paid the attention. Right. So this is a human psychology which is happening in our day-to-day life, right? When we start our session, and if we are not telling students about the importance of the topic, then student will not pay the attention. So sometimes it is very important, even we are taking our classes, even we are taking our session. So before going to the session, we also have to make a proper structurization of your session, that what you will tell to the students, once you have gone through that particular experience of taking the sessions of this particular classes or batches, then what was your experience, what type of students that you have it, and according to that you also need to find out the various solutions, to tackle them. And most importantly, we need to ensure that whatever we are teaching to them, that should be gettable and understandable from our side. And at the same time they should also be able to understand the importance of those concepts, and with those understanding of importance, they would be able to digest easily, right? So that is where tell me I'll forget. So if somebody is speaking in front of you, and if we are not paying attention, so obviously might be we hear them but we are not listening, right? So there is a difference between two terminology, what you hear and what you listen. When you are hearing something, so you are physically there but mentally you are not listening, right? So when listening is say that something is happening, somebody is speaking, and we are also paying the attention what they are speaking, right? So tell me I will forget. So this is the first aspect, that if you are taking the session without having the proper background of the concept, without recap of the historical backgrounds, without conveying the importance of the concept into their day-to-day life, then we would not be able to grab the attention of the students. And if the students are not paying attention, right, they will forget it, right? So instead of that, there are certain concepts which are lifelong importance in their life during any of the subjects that we are dealing with the students. So what we need to do it, we need to slightly change our approach in terms of teaching and learning process. So when we feel that there are certain concepts which are very important for the students' life, so what we need to do it, instead of taking the classes, we need to show them the live demonstration with utilization of various props, various things, which we feel it that, that would be more conveying, that would be more convincing for the students' perspective, when we have to teach them the concept. So that is where if you show me, I may remember, right? So if there are certain topics or there are certain concepts which you feel that that carries the highest weightage or higher weightage of importance into their professional career, irrespective of the field in which we are dealing with. So we always try to, give certain more importance in terms of, taking some extraordinary classes through having by taking them into labs. If you are from chemical background, if you are from physics background, right? If you can take out to them some field work, if you are from management, commerce, right? Whatever the concept requirement is there, according to we have to take a decision as a mentor and as a faculty. So if we show them this kind of exposures, so the chances to accept those concepts and the chances of paying higher attention on those particular concepts are going to be much, much higher. And that is where at least students will try to understand, try to listen to concept that we are trying to teach them into the classroom, because we are showing the practical demonstration of the particular process or particular concept. So that is where at least they are, observing the entire process out of it. So the chances will be high in terms of remembering, in comparison to the only monotonous classroom which are happening in the teaching learning process, right? So that would be that students may remember those concepts if we are going with that. And one more advanced version of making experiential learning is, let the students to get the experience, you know let them involved into the process, that we have to teach them as a part of their career prospects, right? So instead of showing the props, or instead of taking theoretical classes into the classroom, there are certain concepts which we feel that every students must adopt and digest this particular concept compulsorily, even for their future aspect in terms of higher study. So, and this kind of things, we always try to, cover up this particular concept into practical mode, right? So that is where we have to force the students to involve themselves into understanding of this particular concept, right? So we are forcing students either to go into, so the big example of this particular, teaching learning method in terms of experiential is, to have the live experiment of this particular learning is, we are sending them for the internship, right? We are having summer internship, we are having winter internship, where we are forcing our students to go into the companies and, sit with the experts, sit with their portals, do the work that they are doing it, so that is what the work they need to perform in the future. And accordingly, we are sending them into the core area of the concept that we are trying to teach them. So instead of, having the theoretical lectures, if we are involving students practically into this particular concept, so that is where instead of remembering those concepts, the students will practically grab the understanding of that concept, and this understanding will having the lifelong learning process for the students. And there would be a chances that any concept which have been planned by the mentors and faculties in the classroom teaching learning process, then the students will hardly forget those concepts, but it would be lifelong learning and understanding from the point of view of the students, right? So that is where it is experiential learning. So there is a one Chinese proverb which I have explained. So tell me, I'll forget. Show me, I may remember. But if you involve me, it would be a lifelong learning. That is where you gain the experience by your own. And according to that, you should portray your learning, right? So that is where it is experiential learning. So that's why there is National Education Policy 2020. Now it has been revived. And now this national education policy is 2022. So there are certain messages of this national education policy, right? So whenever we are taking the sessions, we are taking the classes for the students, we must ensure that proper utilization of the various pedagogy that should be used in a proper way, and before using it, the faculty, the mentor should try first by their own, by having some demonstration, or even sometimes, we also have to send the faculties for the practical learning. If at all we are having some expectations that faculty should also involve students into this practical learning process. So this will only happens when the faculty himself or herself is having this kind of exposures. Even teaching is an art, right? If somebody feel that I'm from corporate and I'll go and teach students, about the corporate. So I think I have seen many examples that, people are getting failed, right? Because reality and industry, reality of education and industry is working in a different aspect. Obviously, they can help the education system in terms of industrial exposures, but those industrial exposures can be gettable once the theoretical fundamental and foundation is clear. So sometimes there are certain concepts nowadays in education that even industry people are not aware about it. So education has grown like anything, and there are so many more concepts in terms of research analysis has been involved, which I feel that even industry people cannot deal with sometimes. And because experiential learning is keep working on experiments. So if the moment you stop experimenting, nowadays the industries are not having that much experiential learning process in India, because they are just focusing upon their day-to-day work. All the days they are doing the same process, and at the end they went home. Right now, in comparison to the education sector, the education sectors are keeping on tracking. Even they are calling industry people, they are calling from they are adopting interdisciplinary approach, multidisciplinary approach, through which nowadays we are multidisciplinary knowledge we are doing. And so multiple exposure in terms of technical knowledge in terms of research, business, programming, right? This is how the universities so far there's a lot of although right, but yes, the holistic development of the students is much importance. So even though if we are teaching them any concepts apart from our own dimension of the field, we also have to make them aware about the different dimensions of the other fields, because holistic development says that you should be able to deal with all the areas that are directly or indirectly affecting to your day-to-day corporate life, whether you are doing job or whether you are doing your business, right? So even if you are doing your business, your responsibility is going to be much high in comparison to the person who is doing the job. So obviously you have to have integrated approach in terms of having practical knowledge and at the same time theoretical and fundamental knowledge about all the financial and other aspects which are directly or indirectly related to your corporate journey. Inquiry driven, so education should always be inquiry driven. So we always have to focus, we always have to force students to ask the questions. We always have to put them into different scenarios where critical thinking ability should always be on the pick point, where students will try to think about multiple problems and at the same time they would be able to derive the solution of those problems. So that is where the curiosity of the particular concept and learning is always going to be on the higher side. So obviously it should be inquiry driven. Discovery oriented, something new has to be find out, something new that you need to discover. So that is where the teaching learning process should be discovery oriented, and that could be possible with the various experiments that we have to do on a day-to-day life. So that is where it is discovery oriented. Learner centered, right? Always student should be on the center point. Whatever decisions that as an education institute, university, or being a faculty that I need to take up, even to how to carry out my classes. So make sure that students should be at the center point and they are their target audience. So at no cost they should get sacrificed, or their objective should get sacrificed. We always have to take them into consideration, and accordingly we have to design and we have to develop certain things into practices, right? So that is where it is we must have to take those things into consideration. So that is where it is called discussion based. It should be flexible. Sorry, it should be learner centered. So that is where students should be at the center point. Then it should be discussion based. Obviously, we should give some problems and then after we should have the open discussion forum. So this discussion based education system should always be there. It should not be like that I have remember those things, I will download this into the classroom and my job is finished. No, we should engage them into continuous evaluation process, right? That is called CC component, right? Where we have to adopt certain innovative approach in terms of giving them assignments, projects, presentations, where the discussion, case-based discussion, yeah. So this is the different experiential learning process that you need to adopt as per the national education policy. Flexible, obviously, the days are gone that, we are having close monitoring of the students' activities. We would be very strict into the classroom. Right now, the education system has changed. Right, even we have to allow the mobile phones to the students into the classroom. We need to allow them to think. We need to allow them to talk. And that is where. But out of all this process, the administration part of the faculty is very, very important, that how the faculty is creating the image in the minds of students, and at the same time how the different functions that every faculty has to perform during the classroom, right, and how tactfully they are handling the approach and attitude of the students during the classroom and maximizing their needs fulfillment. And that is where faculty would be able to develop the flexible environment for the students. And if at all faculties are making this much efforts in terms of different assignments, inquiry, critical thinking, discussion orientation, flexible, so overall we are in the process of making this journey to be enjoyable. So ultimately, we are making this journey to be more enjoyable for the students' perspective. So students will enjoy your classes. Student would love to attend the classes, and at the same time, student would love to involve themselves into the different activities or various, the field work that we are carrying into our classroom, because ultimately students are enjoying in terms of grabbing the attentions, in terms of learning various concept terminologies, and various way outs to deal with practical problems through the fundamentals of theoretical background, right? So that is where they can align, they can interlink the theoretical aspect to the practical applications, right? So that is where the real-time learning is happening. And that is why we have discussed that, as per national education policy, the teaching and learning process should be holistic in terms of overall development of the students. And that could be possible with the adoption of those parameters. So now what is experiential learning according to you, right? So that is where, we must ensure these few parameters when we are saying experiential learning. So it must be clear in the minds of faculties and mentors that the involvement of the student should not be sacrificed at any point of time. Students should be actively involved in entire process of the teaching learning, because if at all, we have seen our first slide that, if you speak I may forget. Right. So if you speak, if you are doing it, but if the students are not paying attention, so they are just, they are just hearing your lecture. They are not listening and understanding your lecture. So that is where students' active participation, even active participation doesn't mean having some activities, but yes, students should be actively involved in the process of teaching learning that you are doing it, irrespective of the props and methods that we are using it. Even we are taking simple lecture, but that lecture should be in a such a way that, it should align with practical examples, some facts and figures of various institutions from the government institutions. So that's where we would be able to create the interest in the minds of students, right? So that is where we should ensure the active participation of the students as a part of innovative teaching learning. We also need to take into consideration the reflections. Sometimes we are putting some efforts, and we are also seeing that how we are making the impressions in the minds of students, and that impression also leads to some output in terms of the real-time learnings, right? And that real-time learnings we would be able to judge in terms of various evaluation patterns, either on paper or it should be psychological and observational based. So if those refractions in terms of the outputs are going in the positive directions, we need to continue with those parameters. But if we are not getting the results as per the expectations, then we need to provide a second thought, where how we can improve our performance, how we can improve our teaching learning process, due to which the student should grab the maximum attentions for the session. It also based on problem based. Obviously, when we need to digest certain concept into theoretical and practical applications, so that should be problem based, right? So we must need to understand that it should be problem based, right? If we are not putting problems in the front of students, how the students will get the solution, right? So that is what the real time learning and experiment says, that you should always be able to provide the appropriate solutions to your corporate, to your boss, or even for your practical life where you are handling and heading your business. So that is where you should know the problems, you should know the gray area of the solutions of the problems that you are receiving, and that could be always be possible with having the practical learning and experiences that we are getting it into day-to-day life. And so that is where we have to involve them into problem and solution based concept of teaching learning process through the experiential learning. The mode of learning could be anything. It is completely the decision of the faculty and mentor, which he or she felt to apply at a moment, but it should be positive manner. It also take into consideration of collaboration. So collaboration means we should have the collaborations to have different teaching learning methodology with the other universities and institute, even if we are lacking with some expert in terms of humans, or if we are lacking in terms of certain equipments, right? So if we want to bridge the gap between either human resources or technical resources, or even though if you want to have some exposures of industrial relevance to the industry experts, so we can also have the tie-up with university institute and even with the industry person, right? So that is where the collaborative efforts is always going to work out, to plan out some teaching and learning with having the help of the various experts across the different stream, and through which we can align and we can collaborate those efforts into practical and real-time learning approach for the students. And that's where we are making our classroom classes very interesting in comparison to the other universities and institutes. So that is where we would be able to create some image in the minds of students. And as per the NAC, IQAC, we are abide to follow the different bodies. But I'm not believing in them to, to just showcase them what we are doing it, but actually we need to incorporate those things into real-time applications, right? So that is where, the word of mouth publicity would be quite higher. Sometimes it happens that we have the accreditation, but we don't have the good publicity, right? So that is where we have to take into consideration the collaborative efforts. And most importantly, when we are talking about the experiential learning, so we must have to understand that experiential learning is always making much importance and much influences on learning by doing approach. So obviously the people will learn by having some practical application, practical involvement into the process. So that is where people are doing things by learning by themselves, so that is where learning by doing is happening. So there is one experiential cycles, right, which has been given by Kolb's. So Kolb's experiential learning cycle, which is on the screen. So what they Kolb says that when you do something right for the first time, that is called concrete experience, that you are doing it for the acting, doing, and experiencing. So when we are doing certain things in our life, whether it is at the student life or when we are at the corporate life, every stage is a learning stage, right? You will learn something new by having day-to-day experiment. So that is where you will have a concrete experience. Then out of these experiences, you have some good experiences and you might have some bitter truth and bitter experiences. So you must need to go back and you want to see what went right and what went wrong for me, right? So that is called reflective observations. I need to go back and I need to check that, I need to assess myself, what efforts of mine went into right direction and what efforts of mine went into wrong direction, right? So that is where I need to differentiate between the positive parameter and the negative parameters that I have observed, that I have incorporated in my previous experiences, right? So that is where reflective observation will always teach you what was right and what was wrong. And those experiences is always going to help you out, to create the future planning in terms of conceptualizing your efforts, your your directions to decide. And it always give a sense of experiences, and based on which we would be able to draw the conclusion that for which experiential methods or which efforts are going to be on the right direction for me, and what efforts is not going in the right direction me, even though it was right for others, but it is not right for me because my concept, my theories are demanding something else in comparison to others. So that is where I need to conceptualize my efforts. It's not always be that if there is certain method which is proved to be more effective and more efficient for the commerce and management students, would be the more effective for this technology and science students. So that is where I need to abstract conceptualize that what went wrong for me and what went right for me. If there was right things, so I need to see that why it was right, and if it was wrong, then I need to find out the reason. At the same time, I also need to find out the alternate solutions in terms of new adoption methods that I need to evaluate, right? So that is where I need to have the continuous experimentations in my life. So if something has not turned up to be right, then I need to find out the new solutions, new a new concept to which I would be able to reach out to the new development methods, new techniques, new plans of actions that I need to execute in my day-to-day career, right? So that is where it is active experimentation. So when I reach to the active experimentations, I have continued with my good points, and at the same time, whatever bad things which I have it, I had tried to overcome with those limitations, and through which I had made myself at least capable and experienced that I would be able to deliver my session to be on the right track, right direction, and most importantly, from the student centric perspective. And this would be possible with having continuous experiential learnings. And that is what the COGS experiential learning cycle is conveying to faculties and students, that life is continuous learning. What rights today would be wrong for tomorrow, right? But today is right, so we should continue. With the moment we feel that this lose the momentum, we also need to find out the right solutions. And the best example of this is when we are using mobile phone. So earlier it was no Android and Apple, but gradually we have started with window phones. Now there is no window phones in the market. Where is Nokia, which was completely window phone? So at that time, Nokia was the need of an hour. But the moment the Android came, window phones are out of the market and completely they are vanished from the market in today's era. But although at one point of time it was a need of an, right? So what is right today will not be the right for tomorrow, but we keep continuing our experiments. And out of those experiment, we always need to adopt the good changes which can shape our future into better direction. And that is what we have to teach to our students as a part of experiential learning. So cycle of experiential learning. So you can see this, whatever you are experiencing in your life, or even as a faculty, whatever you are teaching to the students with your subject and content that you are sharing, right? So that is where you might have certain activities, some props, some practical exposures, and by sending them into industries and all this. So you will try to, experiment all those things, and out of that, you want to evaluate that which method is right for which concept. So that is where you need to at least incorporate or execute certain activities that is given as an assignments to the students. And once it got finished, you might share your experience. So firstly, it start with the students, that if I have sent my students to the industry, so they might have certain observation, they might have certain experiences that needs to be shared. So that is called the reactions that we have to observe from the students. And those reactions, we need to judge, we need to evaluate, and that is what it's called analyzing. So based on the students experiences, we need to analyze the pattern of experiences with the event wise reaching learning which has happened as a part of experiential learning. So we need to analyze the dynamic patterns that students has derived out of these experiences. And once we are analyzing, we need to infer, we need to draw a conclusion, we need to draw some theories, some principles out of those experiment. And once we have inferred, or once we have drawn certain principles and concepts, we need to start applying those concepts as a part of real-time teaching learning process, whether we are at the same situation, or even though if those experiments says that we need to adopt certain new scenario and situation, so then accordingly we also have to shift our plan, right? And we also need to observe that out of this application based teaching learning process through the experiential learning, we also need to observe the students feedback, and based on those feedback in terms of their real-time growth which is happening, right? So again, we need to have find out the loopholes and lacunas of the system, and again start experiencing the new methods, new technology, new terminologies, new mode of training learning, teaching learning, right? So that is where life is continuously learning process, where learning should not get stopped. If we are talking about innovative teaching and learning process, and those innovative teaching learning process will always be adaptable for the faculty, even at the faculty stage also. When faculty have experienced something at some point of time, and to experiences those things, faculty should always be open up to go into the market, either through attending some faculty development program, some workshops, some orientation program, refresher program, short-term courses, so these are the sources through which we meet each other, we share our experiences, we analyze, why this person is having this much, efficiency in this particular things. So at least we'll come to know where we are lacking it, and we'll start working on our deficiency. And the moment we'll do those things, we always will have a sharpened knowledge, and that is where we have the better future for ourselves also. And at the same time, if we are making ourselves to be the better teacher, then we would be able to shape up the careers of the students in a better perspective, right, in a better way. So that is where experiential learning always comes into picture. So there are various methods of experimental learnings. So these are the various methods of experimental learning. So field trips, narratives, conducting experiments, simulations, games, storytelling, focused imagine, felt observations, role play, model building, and survey. So these are the few, the innovative teaching learning in terms of experiential learning methods which I have put it over here. Let's see that one by one. Field trip. So this is one example of, show me, I will remember. So this is an example of this. When you take students to be on field trip, they will not involve themselves into the process, but yes, they are observing the process which has been done by the others, outside their classroom. So obviously, at least they are observing the live demonstration of the concept that they are learning, or the concept which is a part of their curriculum in a practical mode, right? So that is where they have more sustained investigations on the project, and that creates a curiosity in their minds. So whenever I want to become this kind of person, even there will be some inspirational stories, right? If the students are going into the market, on the field, and if somebody will attract their success story to the students, so students would always love to become as an ideal of that particular person. So at least they will get some directions of their life, when we are taking them into the practical scenario as a field trip, right? So they will be clear what they have to do, and they also be instructed about the roles and responsibility. And obviously they will take out some feedbacks from the activities which is happening in the industry or the area where they are going out of the class. So narrative is a storytelling, where to the point informations that we need to provide to the students, and narrative. So you can faculty in terms of how they makes sense story. Able to how coming. So that is where we have to attention of the students. This is just like when you are going for movie, and how the movie will attract you by having strong story, and picturization. So that is where you have to create some hypothetical characters which creates and grab the attention of the students, so they would not leave out in between, and they will continuously be with you whatever story that you are telling, and they are not losing themselves in between. So that is where the careful observation support is always be required in terms of storytelling. And it is important criteria, concerning the titles that have been attempted by the writer, right? So if you want to have some titles and based on which You need to convey some message. So the narratives is going to be much important. Experiential learning tools. Experiments, this is for applicable for all the technical and science background students, where they have to go into either technical or chemical labs, and based on which they are creating some learning through having various experiments of different concept chemicals, and through those chemicals, they are making certain different equations, and based on those equations they will try to verify and falsify with the trial and error method, right? So when water is considered to be H2O, so there is a concept of 2 drops of water and 1 drop of 2 drops of hydrogen and 1 drop of oxygen, so that is called H2O. So when the scientist has to try and test, so they might have used this particular variations for multiple times, but at the end, with the trial and error experiments, with the learning, with the hypothetical situations, they would be able to create some fruitful chemical solutions out of their experiments, right? So that is where it's a cause and effect relations, how the different chemicals are affecting to each other, and based on those mixtures, how this chemical is working for the society and benefits of the human. And that is where you would be able to create some new products in terms of medicals, medicines, drugs, or whatsoever which is important for the human perspective. So that is where experiments. So again, for teaching learning also, so this is always comes from the experiment. So that is where we have to do simulation. So it is a kinesthetic situation where you are not just seeing the concept, or you are not just listening the concept, but whatever you are doing it, whatever things that you are learning in the classroom in as a part of your curriculum, that is where you are most ensuring that you are doing the things with touching and doing. So you touch it and do it, right? So that is where there are certain methods like computer simulations, physical simulations, role playing, business simulations, and military simulations, right? So this is where, if you want to become a military, you can't become a military from the first day, but before that you have to draw yourself to be on that particular fitness ground, and for which you have to make a lot of efforts. So then only you will be become the military. Business simulations, so if you want to enter into business, you need to understand the perspective of the business, and for which you need to undergo with certain games, role play model things. So that is where you will at least create some sensitivity about the area you are targeting, and once you reach at this area, you will be able to at least justify in a better way by having some simulations and hypothetical situations that is in your mind. Gameplay, obviously, like just like a business game, stock market games. So if you want to understand the buying and selling parameters of the stock market, so if you want to teach the students in terms of intraday, buy sell, various concept, what is base price, at what price you have to see, what is bullish market, bearish market. So when we are teaching in terms of theory, I think it is out of the way of the mind of students. But at the same time, if we are dragging them into stock market game, where we are trying to explain them the different scenario on the portal by having the live demonstration, by observing, or even they are also involved and they are be the part of this particular game. So that is where the understanding that students will develop out of this learning would be commendable. And believe me, they don't have to go and read any theories for this. Students would be able to decide and judge the scenario very easily, because they are learning from the experience of someone, right? So that is where they have already reached to one level where they don't require any books, because they are learning on the portal. So that is where this kind of game should always be introduced in a curriculum, and that is where the understanding about the critical concept, which is very difficult to digest in the minds of students, would be digestible by very easy and conveniently if we are adopting this kind of approach. Storytelling, so usually it is, it's a combination of words, image, sounds, that creates the sensitivity in the minds of students. And that is called, it was a very powerful tool in the ancient time. You just remember or about the Rusi Muni, and the era of AD, right? Where the people are learning from the ashram, where the meetings was happening between the religious perspective and many other parameters, where the discussion was happening, certain stories was portraying in the, for the, you know the son of king, they are having some history. So this is where, if the particular king needs to understand the kingdom of that particular kingdom of his, right? So he always used to say stories to his son or daughter, so that they should also digest the religious and other parameters of their kingdoms in the future. So that is where, to create the sensitivity of particular concept and theory, storytelling is also one of the medium of experiential learning. Focused imagine, right? So when we need to force our students to imagine in the right direction, so that is called focused imagine. When the students focused and imagination should be in the right direction, they will reach to their destination very fast. But at the same time, if the students are not clear what they are learning, what they are listening, and what they are doing it always create a chaotic situations in the minds of students, and that is where they would be indecisive in terms of deciding their career path. So it is very difficult situations for any students in their life. So if we want to make our students to be correct and clear, it is very important that students in their curriculum and in their teaching learning process, they have understood all the concept very clearly, and at the same time the importance of that particular parameter. And it was the responsibility of the teachers and faculties that, they had made it very clear in their minds of students by adopting various teaching and learning pedagogy and through the various experience, right? So that is where, if the experiential learning tools and techniques will be applicable, the concept and clarity in the minds of students are quite high, which you can see in the first image. And at the same time, if the new and fresh teachers are teaching students for their career prospect, I'm not saying that fresh is always going to be fresh, but obviously the experiences person is always makes a sense, and that is why we call it then experienced person, right? So that is where certain gaps or certain queries would always be there in the minds of students, and that will create a chaotic situation, and that can hamper their growth in their future. Field observation. So it is a research methods where researcher directly observes and records behavior, events, or phenomenon in a natural setting. And this method is commonly used in social sciences, anthropology, ecology, and educations together to collect data about a particular environment or a group of individuals. So, right, so you send them into field, and you are giving some assignments and tasks to observe the practical scenario, and they will observe those things. Role play. So this creates the sensitivity of the different professions, different areas, different categories, different jobs that every student needs to perform in their life. So that is where it creates a sensitivity in the minds of students. So when you become a salesperson, and although you are not a salesperson, but if any salesperson is coming to your house for selling something, sometimes we are making fun of them. So instead of saying them, don't make a fun, let them be the salesperson, and try to understand what is the pain that salesperson has to take up during his professional journey, right? How to deal with a customer, how the customer are treating them, what kind of insult that you need to handle, what kind of critical situation needs to be handled, how to convince the client, and how to make a effective sales. So all those concept, you will learn when you involve yourself to be a salesperson, right? So that is where role playing is very important. Sometimes lawyer, so you also need to understand the pain of lawyer sometimes. So that is where you create the sensitivity about the different professions through the experiential learning. So instead of forcing students to respect everyone, let them involve into different profession and try to create the sensitivity towards the different professions in the world, and that is where they will try to respect the market. So that is where the different concerns, values, and ethics will be created in the minds of students. So instead of teaching them the various theories of ethics and governance, let them involved into the process and try to understand the importance of ethics into the day-to-day life. So only one side is not be the part, we also need to show them the other side of that particular profession. So that is where role play is going to be very important tools for the teaching learning as a part of experiential model building. So obviously for construction, civil background people, when they have to create certain models on certain angles, certain parameters, certain numbers. So that is where model building is going to be very, very important, parameters for the students' perspective. Surveys. So it's a matter of gathering information from this individual. Even if you want to understand the emotions, sentiments, opinions, perceptions of someone, so that is the best methods to incorporate. It also takes the opinions of students for the particular choice or selections that we have to make up. So that's it from my side. Now I'm making this session open for question answer. So if at all any questions, any suggestions to incorporate, to share, your live practical experiences, so you can share it. Yeah. Yes, please. Any questions, any suggestions?
Thank you. It's a wonderful opportunity to participate this program, sir.
Thank
Please,
you.
can you please share this weekdays of the program schedule and PPTs? And I shared this type of instructions to my colleagues, sir. Can you
Right, right.
please?
We would be grateful to have you here. Thank you, sir. Yeah, definitely. We can subscribe. You can subscribe our YouTube channel also.
Yeah,
Where
sure.
right, yeah.
Can you please share these slides to your mail, sir? Those who are participating in
Right,
this, sir.
right, right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Sir, good evening,
Yes.
sir.
Good evening.
Yeah, this is Dr. Labani Basu. I would like to know from you that, uh, teaching methodology, basically in classroom, like brainstorming or Delphi techniques or role play. Uh, what are the I mean to say, what is the best techniques for the students who are very reluctant and mediocre students? I mean to say, I have seen at the time of rendering my service towards students that most of the students who are very good enough in studies and they are very much good enough in extracurricular activities too, they are basically taking part of this kind of like role plays or innovative teaching techniques. But those students who are not interested in studies and they're very much restrained into a certain thing that they will not, I mean to say, basically they're reluctant to take part of this all this kind of things. So what would be the best method to make them engage into this kind of techniques, through which they can also able to understand that yes, they have the capacity but they are not knowing it properly, or they are not able to understand what they can do or what not. What do you
See,
think, sir?
all about the approach. So first of all, I have mentioned in my slides also. There is no right approach, or there is no wrong approach for any of the topic that we are teaching. So we being a mentor, we being a faculty, we need to take a decision. Like, we cannot teach them every concept to send them into field, right? But for certain concept, for universally, irrespective of whether there are certain students to be more attentive and there are certain students they are very reluctant. But we need to centralize the things, like, which concept is very, very important. So those who are even reluctant also, and those who are very sincere also. But obviously the psychological parameter says that, if the students are doing things by their own, it always create some clarity of thoughts and of the concept. So if you are practically involve them, right, so they will be psychologically engaged themselves into that process. you know so the chances of putting their attentions in other activities will always going to be stopped, right? So if you feel that all those students who are some good in terms of extracurricular activities, so because their approach and their psychologies are supporting in that manner that they cannot learn theoretical things, they learn from the practical aspect. And I have seen this kind of students that they are more successful in comparison to the students who are more curious and they're learning the theoretical aspect, because the practical learning is always going to be will create a job, practical will create business. It makes a difference, right? So they cannot say that if they are not paying attention, that they are not going to good students and they will not have the bright future. But although their minds are diverting into certain areas, which even we are trying to drag them out to focus into the classroom teaching, but their aims and their goals of the life is something else, right? So they want to take out of the classroom. But again, for not all students, there are certain students who are not having any sort of goals and also. But yeah, to tackle this kind of students, we have to involve them into some activities, some live demonstration projects, and that is where they will create some understanding, and that would be a lifelong learning lesson for them, and through which at least they will understand the importance of the clarity of concept. Might be possible that for next time they will pay the attention if they will understand the importance of that particular learning, that you are getting it from one particular faculty or for one particular subjects. Even students approach are also having for some faculty perspective oriented or subject oriented also. So that is where different areas are there. Like, when I was studying, I was not interested in mathematics. So even though my faculty will force, I will not, because some psychological assumption and some psychological support is always going to work out. So again, as I said, for one subject, there are certain tools which was worked out, but for other subjects, it might not be. So it's a situation based, and that is what we have said. It comes from the experiments.
Thank you so much, sir. It's a very satisfactory answer. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other questions, suggestions? So I think no questions at all. Thank you so much, all of you, for connecting. Thank you so much, RFI team, for inviting Ajay sir, Saurabh sir, and the coordinator for today event. I forgot the name. Can I have the name, please? The person who has introduced me. So anyways, thank you so much from my side. Thank you all the participants for your patient listening. Thank you. Good night.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yes,
Thank you,
Swanika
Princess.
madam, please. Thank you.
Yes.